Well, so the main objective of this lesson is to simplify the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Okay, to help you easily understand the step-by-step process that is involved in the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Now, what is renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system? Simply known as the Raas. What is renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system? Now, this system is actually a hormonal system. Okay, it's a hormonal system that plays a critical role in regulating blood pressure, controlling or regulating your fluid and electrolyte balance, and also regulating your systemic vascular resistance. Okay, so with the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, at the end of the process, what your body seek to achieve with this system is that your blood pressure will be well controlled or properly controlled, your fluid and electrolyte will be balanced, and then your systemic vascular resistance would also be properly regulated. This is the main reason for the occurrence of this process. Okay, now what would actually activate this process? Now, one thing you should know is that in physiology, okay, every process that occurs is usually activated by certain signals. Okay, or there should be a certain physiological occurrence that will activate that process. And for renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, what actually the process that activates or what actually activates this renin-angiotensin system is a drop in your blood pressure. Okay, so the moment your blood pressure reduces, okay, it activates this renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. A drop in your blood pressure. Not only a drop in your blood pressure, when there is a decrease in your blood sodium levels. Okay, so that should tell you in an exams, okay, or in effect, in application, what you should keep in your mind is that when someone is having hypokalemia or when there is a decreased blood pressure, in effect, it can activate this renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Okay, so these are the two things or two processes, okay, or occurrences that will activate the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system the moment your blood pressure drops. And most of the time they use this in certain MCQ questions. Okay, which of the following processes or occurrences will activate the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system when there is a drop in the blood pressure, when your blood pressure reduces? Okay, and then again, when there is a decrease in your blood sodium levels. Okay, these two occurrences would trigger a cascade of events that would help restore normal conditions. Okay, so when there is a drop in your blood pressure, it's an abnormal conditions. And also when there is a decrease in your blood sodium levels, it's also an abnormal conditions. So these two occurrences, okay, are the occurrences that can trigger series of cascade of events that can help reduce that can help to restore normal conditions or normal physiological conditions. Okay, now in summary, before we zoom into detail to look comprehensively at what actually goes on. In summary, this system involves the release of hormones. And what are these hormones? Hormones like renin, okay, angiotensin 2, and then aldosterone, that work together to increase blood pressure and regulate your kidney function. Okay, so in summary, the whole idea, what actually goes on in this process is that the process involves the release of certain hormones like a hormone we call renin, produced by your kidneys, and then a hormone angiotensin 2, and then aldosterone, okay, that work together to increase your blood pressure and then regulate your kidney function. So if you remember very well, we said that what actually activates this process is a drop in your blood pressure. So if we want to if the process is activated by a drop in your blood pressure, then it means that what this system actually seeks to achieve or would achieve is an increase in blood pressure, and then again to regulate your kidney functions. Okay, because these are the two things that will activate the process: a drop in the blood pressure and a decrease in sodium levels. Control of sodium levels, okay, is regulated by the kidneys. Okay, so if these are the two things that will activate the process, then in effect, at the end of the day, we want to see an increase in the blood pressure, and we want to see a situation where there is a normal regulation of the kidney functions. All right, so that is it. Now, what is the importance of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system? Like I said earlier on, to regulate your blood pressure. Okay, now this renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system is very essential for long-term control of your blood pressure. Okay, and also to prevent hypotension. So like I said, the system is activated when you have a low blood pressure, and the whole idea is to help increase your blood pressure. Is that okay? Good. Then again, once this system, okay, is helping to reduce blood pressure, okay, good, one of the things that would happen at the end of this process is an increase in water retention. And in as much as this would help to prevent hypotension, it will also ensure that adequate amount of blood reach vital organs in your body. Okay, so this Raas system helps to regulate your blood pressure. It also helps to ensure fluid and electrolyte balance. Okay, it helps to control your levels of sodium and water. Okay, so when we go through the process, you realize that one of the situations that will happen at the end of this process is sodium and water retention. Is that okay? And this will contribute to the regulation, or this will contribute to fluid and electrolyte balance. Okay, good, because you remember we learned that one of the triggering factors is when there is a decrease in sodium levels in your body. Okay, and when there is a decrease in your blood sodium levels, it's not a balanced situation. Is that okay? It's an imbalance. Okay, so it helps to regulate your fluid and electrolyte balance, and then it also helps your body to respond to stress. Okay, because listen, this renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system is actually activated in response to conditions like dehydration, because one of the cardinal signs of dehydration is hypotension. One of the cardinal signs of dehydration is hypotension. Okay, good. Hemorrhage. Okay, one of the situations that will occur in hemorrhage is that there would be a reduction in the blood volume. Okay, and anytime there is a reduction in your blood volume, that can affect your blood pressure. It can lead to a decrease in your blood pressure, and that can lead to shock. Okay, good. So the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system help you to respond to stress situations like dehydration, stress situations arising from dehydration, stress situations arising from hemorrhage or shock. Okay, by helping you to restore blood volume and then blood pressure. Okay, so that is another importance of Raas. Now, with the clinical relevance of this process, if someone is having a malfunction in the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, in fact, it can lead to conditions like hypertension. It can lead to conditions like heart failure. Why hypertension? It can lead to conditions like hypertension because, in as much as the system is regulated, when there is a decrease, it's activated when there is a decrease in blood pressure. This system has to also be deactivated or suppressed when there is an increase in your blood pressure. Okay, so if there is no mechanism to suppress the occurrence of this process when there is an increase in your blood pressure can also go on, and that will become a problem. So fine, it's a system that regulates blood pressure, but it's also being regulated by certain processes in your body. Is that okay? So any malfunction in this renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system can actually lead to conditions like hypertension. Okay, it can actually lead to conditions like heart failure. Is that okay? Because, for example, if you have a very severe form of hypotension, is that okay? Very severe form of hypotension, and then vital organs in your body are not getting adequate amounts of blood, a lot of cardiovascular conditions can occur, like heart failure, heart attack, and all that can occur because your heart itself would not be receiving adequate amounts of blood supply. Is that okay? So, with the clinical relevance, malfunction in Raas can lead to diseases like hypertension, heart failure, chronic kidney disease. Is that okay? Chronic kidney disease, because if Raas is not well regulated, for your blood pressure to be normalized, or for you to achieve normal blood pressure, is that okay? At the end of the day, the kidneys are not going to receive adequate amount of blood, and that can affect how the kidneys are supposed to function. Is that okay? Good. So that is it for renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. So with the significance of this system, it helps to regulate blood pressure. Essentially, or more specifically, it helps to increase your blood pressure and ensure that vital organs are receiving adequate amount of blood. Okay, it also helps to control fluid and electrolyte balance, because in effect, one of the situations that will occur at the end of this system is sodium and water retention in the body. And once you are retaining sodium, and then once you are retaining sodium, water also follows at the end of the day, and that helps to control or regulate your fluid and electrolyte balance. It helps to respond to stressful situations that arises from dehydration, hemorrhage, shock, and that we can say it helps to restore your blood volume and blood pressure. Okay, so that is the importance of renin. Now, what organs are involved in this process? What are the organs that are involved? Because one very useful thing in physiology is that you need to, if we are talking about a system is when a group of organs come together to perform a certain or a specific function. When a group of organs, okay, and when we say an organ is when different kinds of tissue or a particular tissue come together to help achieve a certain function. Now, this is a system, so you first of all have to ask yourself, what organs are coming together to actually ensure normal occurrence of this system? Is that okay? Or normal regulation or function of the system. Now, the organs that plays key role in the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, we have kidneys, we have the liver, we have the lungs, we have the adrenal gland, we have blood vessels. Okay, these are the 5 organs that comes together to ensure smooth occurrence of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Okay, these organs all play major roles in the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Now, with the kidneys, what will the kidneys do? In fact, the whole process starts in the kidneys. The whole process of renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system starts in the kidneys. Okay, good. And we have the liver. So the kidneys detect the low blood pressure or low sodium levels and releases renin. Okay, so over here on this very slide, I'm just helping you to know, okay, to list out the various organs that actually play major role in the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. But as we move on, we would actually go through the entire process. Is that okay? More specifically for you to understand the step-by-step approach to renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. So the kidneys, the liver. Okay, so in the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, is the liver that produces the angiotensinogen, and this angiotensinogen is a protein. There are a lot of proteins that are produced in the liver. There are a lot of proteins in the blood that are produced by the liver. One of them is angiotensinogen. It's a protein that actually actually converted by renin. Okay, it is converted by renin into angiotensin 1. Is that okay? So this renin, this angiotensinogen is a protein that is produced by the liver. Once it is produced and released into the blood, in the presence of renin, this renin will convert the angiotensinogen into angiotensin or angiotensin 1. In some literatures, they will just write angiotensin. It's the same as angiotensin 1. Is that okay? Good. So in some literatures, you see angiotensin is the same as angiotensin 1. Okay. So this angiotensinogen formerly produced by the liver, which is a protein in the blood, in the presence of renin, which has also been released by the kidney as a result of a reduction in blood pressure, okay, would be converted into angiotensin 1 or angiotensin. Now, the next organ that plays major role in the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system is the lungs. Okay, so the lungs produces what we call angiotensin converting enzyme. And this angiotensin converting enzyme, which we usually call ACE, okay, it converts this angiotensin 1, okay, into angiotensin 2. Is that okay? And this angiotensin 2 is a potent vasoconstrictor, and it also has an impact on the adrenal glands. Okay, it has an impact on the adrenal glands. Now, with adrenal glands, this is what happens with adrenal glands. The adrenal glands releases aldosterone. Okay, these glands release aldosterone in response to angiotensin 2. And once angiotensin 2 is being produced, once angiotensin 2 is being produced, it's a potent vasoconstrictor. It also stimulates the adrenal glands to produce aldosterone in response to the angiotensin 2. And this aldosterone produces sodium. It acts on the renal tubules to ensure sodium and water retention in the kidneys. Is that okay? And then we said that the angiotensin converting enzyme converts angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2. This angiotensin 2 is a potent vasoconstrictor, meaning it will have an impact on your blood vessels. It constricts your blood vessels. Okay, so the angiotensin 2 can cause vasoconstriction, and then again, it will also lead to narrowing of your blood vessels. And once your blood vessels becomes narrow, it means there is going to be an increase in your systemic vascular resistance. And the moment there is an increase in your systemic vascular resistance, your blood pressure would increase. Now, this is just to list out the organs that plays role in the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Now, let's go straight to the process, or the step-by-step process. Okay, so the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, the step-by-step process. Okay, so we learned that what actually triggers this renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system is a reduction in your blood pressure, a decreased blood pressure. This is where the whole thing begins. Okay, so for example, someone have suffered severe dehydration, okay, or someone have suffered a hemorrhage and have lost a lot of blood, or someone in shock who have lost a lot of blood, okay, and is having a reduction or a reduced or a very low blood pressure. Okay, this is where the whole process will start. Okay, so once there is a reduced blood pressure, okay, good, what will happen is that the volume of blood that would be going to the kidneys will reduce. The blood flow to the kidneys will reduce. And this is what will trigger the cycle, renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Once someone is having a reduction in blood pressure as a result of, let's say, a shock, hypotension, maybe someone have suffered a hemorrhage, have lost a lot of blood, and then the blood volume have reduced, person is having hypertension. At the end of the day, what will happen is that because of the hypotension, the amount of blood that is going to be sent to the kidneys will reduce, and that is what will trigger the process. Okay, now we have specialized cells within the kidneys that detect the low blood pressure. Is that okay? We have specialized cells within the kidneys that detect the low blood pressure. The name of these cells, we call these cells the justoglomerular cells. Okay, so we have the justoglomerular cells. Okay, good. So the justoglomerular cells, more specifically, these cells are actually located at a very unique area in the kidneys that we call the justoglomerular apparatus. Is that okay? Good. At the area where blood is being supplied into the kidneys. Okay, so there are some specialized cells over there, and these are the cells that actually detect the reduction in blood pressure. Okay, so once your blood pressure reduces, the amount of blood that is supposed to be sent to the kidneys will reduce. Okay, and once the amount of blood supposed to be sent to the kidney reduces, the justoglomerular cells, which are specialized cells, will detect that reduction in blood pressure. Is that okay? Good. Now, the kidneys are actually going to use 3 mechanisms, okay, to actually detect the reduction in the blood pressure. The kidneys will use 3 mechanisms to actually detect the reduction in the blood pressure and then activate the process. Now, the first mechanism the kidney will use is the kidney will use what we call baroreceptors in the afferent arterioles. We have some baroreceptors in the afferent arterioles. Okay, now if we say the afferent arterioles from the renal system, the afferent arterioles are the arteries, the small arteries that supply blood to the glomerulus in the kidney. That is what we call the afferent arterioles. Now, within these arterioles, we have baroreceptors over there. These baroreceptors are actually sensitive to changes in your blood pressure. Okay, so within the afferent arterioles, is that okay? Within your afferent arterioles, we have some baroreceptors over there. What these baroreceptors do is that they are very highly sensitive to changes in your blood pressure. So once there is a change in your blood pressure, in this case a massive change like a decrease in your blood pressure, these baroreceptors in the afferent arterioles will detect them. Is that okay? They will detect, they will sense that there is a reduction in the blood pressure. Okay, or it will receive that signal of low blood pressure. Okay, and in response to this signal, that there is a reduction in blood pressure, the justoglomerular cells will release renin. Okay, so now listen very carefully. There are some specialized cells within the kidney or specialized mechanisms that help to detect the reduction in the blood pressure in order for the process to be activated. Now, these 3 mechanisms, the first one is the baroreceptors that are located in the afferent arterioles. Okay, so we have some baroreceptors located in the afferent arterioles, and the afferent arterioles are the small arteries that supply blood to the glomerulus in your kidney. Okay, so now these afferent arterioles actually contains the baroreceptors, and these baroreceptors are highly sensitive to changes in your blood pressure. So the moment your blood pressure drops, okay, these baroreceptors will stretch. Okay, they stretch and then they decrease. And once they stretch and decrease, they send a signal, okay, of low blood pressure. Okay, and in response to that signal, the justoglomerular cells actually releases the renin. It's the justoglomerular cells that actually produces the renin. Now let's look at the second thing that would actually help to activate this process. The second of the mechanisms, the 3 mechanisms that help to activate this renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system is sodium detection in the distal tubule. Sodium detection in the distal tubule. Okay, so now you remember the distal convoluted tubule in the kidney renal system. You know, the kidney has a way. that it also monitors your sodium concentration in the fluid that is flowing through your distal convoluted tubule. Okay, and this is done by specialized cell. We call it the macula densa cells. Okay, now these macula densa cells, they are actually part of what we call the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Now, these juxtaglomerular apparatus, they are actually the entire three mechanisms that comes together to detect, okay, or that comes together to trigger the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Okay, so the kidney has, specialized way that it monitors the concentration of sodium that is flowing through the distal convoluted tubule. Okay, and how is that possible? It is possible with the presence of what we call macula densa cells. Okay, and these cells are located in the distal convoluted tubules. Is that okay? So when your blood pressure is low, okay, and less sodium is delivered to the distal tubule because of the reduced filtration. Because see, if your blood pressure is very low, there is going to be a reduced ultrafiltration. The filtration rate will reduce. Okay, and therefore the macula densa cells is going to sense a reduced sodium concentration. Is that okay? And they would also send a signal. So the reduced sodium concentration will also send a signal, or will additionally send a signal to the juxtaglomerular cells to release the renin. Okay, so the whole idea is that is this renin that actually starts the whole process. But what will trigger the release of the renin? This renin is actually produced by the juxtaglomerular cells in the kidney. You need to know that because that can also be asked in an MCQ question, or it can be asked in an exams. This renin is what actually starts the whole process. But what produces this renin is the juxtaglomerular cells. But we have three mechanisms that will occur in the body. Okay, three mechanisms that will occur in the body for the juxtaglomerular cells to produce the renin. And the first one is what we call the baroreceptors in the afferent arterioles. So I explained that the baroreceptors in the afferent arterioles, okay, in the afferent arterioles that supply blood to the glomerulus of the kidneys, these afferent arterioles, we have baroreceptors inside. Okay, so once these baroreceptors, they are highly sensitive to changes in blood pressure. So once your blood pressure becomes low, the baroreceptors detect it and they send a signal to the juxtaglomerular cells to release renin. And the second of the mechanisms that help to produce the renin from the juxtaglomerular cells is when is the sodium detection in the distal tubules. So we have specialized cells in the distal tubules. We call it the macula densa cells. Now these cells has the ability to sense the concentration of sodium that is flowing into the distal convoluted tubules. Okay, so now once there is a low blood pressure, the filtration rate will reduce. So less amount of sodium is eventually going to reach the distal convoluted tubules. And that will be sensed by the macula densa cells. And that additionally will send a signal to the juxtaglomerular cells to release renin. Now let's look at the third mechanism that will actually stimulate the juxtaglomerular cells. The third mechanism is the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so now listen very carefully. The moment your blood pressure drops, okay, once your blood pressure drops, one of the systems that will be automatically activated is the sympathetic nervous system. So the moment your blood pressure drops, the sympathetic nervous system is activated. Okay, and directly, once your sympathetic nervous system is activated, juxtaglomerular cells releases renin. Okay, because these juxtaglomerular cells, okay, they are actually under the regulation of the sympathetic nervous system. So once this sympathetic nervous system is stimulated, okay, the juxtaglomerular cells are being released. The juxtaglomerular cells are being stimulated to release the renin as part of your body's response to low blood pressure. So the moment your blood pressure is very low, sympathetic nervous system is automatically activated. And once sympathetic nervous system is activated, it stimulates the gastroglomerular cells directly to release renin as part of the response. So you see, these are the three mechanisms, the three strong mechanisms that will actually cause the release of the renin. So fine, the whole process starts with a reduced blood pressure, but we have three mechanisms that will occur after the reduction in the blood pressure to cause the renin release. The renin is actually released by the gastroglomerular cells. Is that okay? But what will stimulate the gastroglomerular cells to release that renin is three processes. One, the baroreceptors in the afferent arterioles. Two, the sodium detection cells in the distal convoluted tubule. And three, the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so once your blood pressure is very low, we have specialized cells in your afferent arterioles, which are the baroreceptors that has the ability to detect changes in your blood pressure. And so they detect the reduction in your blood pressure and they send a signal to the gastroglomerular cells to release renin. That is one. The second one is the sodium detection in the distal tubules. Okay, if your blood pressure is very low and reduced amount of blood is reaching the kidneys, okay, that will lead to a reduction in the filtration rate. And once the filtration rate reduces, low amount of blood is going to reach the distal convoluted tubules, and that would also lead to a reduction in the concentration of sodium in the distal tubules. Is that okay? And in the distal convoluted tubule, we have specialized cells that we call the macular denser cells, which is able to sense or have the ability to sense the reduced sodium concentration. Okay, and then the reduced sodium concentration actually sends a signal to the gastroglomerular cells. It is interpreted as a low blood pressure occurring at the filtration level, and it sends a signal to the gastroglomerular cells to also produce renin. That is the second process. And then the last one is the sympathetic nervous system. If your blood pressure reduces straight, your sympathetic nervous system is activated. And activation of your sympathetic nervous system actually stimulates directly the gastroglomerular cells to also what? To also produce the renin. So now the renin has been produced. Let's see what will happen. Now, once your renin is being produced, okay, so now the renin has been released following a decrease in your blood pressure by going through all the process, okay, of which the gastroglomerular cells produces the renin. So now the renin have been produced and it's in the blood. Already in your blood, we have a protein inside your blood. We call it the angiotensinogen. It's a protein inside your blood. It is produced by the liver. You know, the liver produces a lot of proteins. And one of those proteins produced by the liver is angiotensinogen. So now, renin has been released into the blood from the kidney, specifically from the gastroglomerular cells. Angiotensinogen is already in the blood. It's being produced by the liver. Okay, now this renin that has been released into the blood will convert the angiotensinogen produced by the liver into angiotensin or angiotensin 1. Okay, so the renin that is being produced by the liver is being released by the kidney, actually converts angiotensinogen, which is being produced by the liver, into angiotensin 1. Okay, into angiotensin 1. Okay, now this angiotensin 1, which is actually coming from the angiotensinogen which has been converted by the renin. This angiotensin 1 is now in the blood. Okay, it circulates and it gets to the lungs. Okay, the lung produces an enzyme. We call it the angiotensin converting enzyme. Okay, this enzyme is released by the lungs. And what this enzyme does is that this enzyme actually converts this angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. Okay, this enzyme. So now, after the kidneys has produced the renin, with the help of the juxtaglomerular cells through three mechanisms that we've explained. Okay, it's released into the blood. And originally in the blood, we have angiotensinogen, which is produced by the liver. Okay, the renin will convert the angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1 or angiotensin. Now, as it goes through circulation, this angiotensin reaches the lungs, and the lungs produces an enzyme. We call it angiotensin converting enzyme, which converts the angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. Now, this angiotensin 2 we are seeing over here is actually a potent vasoconstrictor. It's a potent vasoconstrictor, meaning it has the ability to constrict your peripheral blood vessels. It has that ability to constrict your peripheral blood vessels. And once your peripheral blood vessels are constricted, there is going to be an increase in systemic vascular resistance. And you know, in blood pressure, one of the things that can affect your blood pressure is vascular resistance. So the moment your systemic vascular resistance increases, your blood pressure also increases. That is one of the functions of the angiotensin 2. Now, another thing that this angiotensin 2 will do is that this angiotensin 2 actually acts on the adrenal gland for the adrenal gland to produce aldosterone. And aldosterone will further act on the kidneys to cause sodium and water reabsorption. In fact, it will cause sodium resorption. But what you should know is that anywhere sodium goes, water follows. So in effect, it will cause sodium and water resorption. Is that okay? Good. So aldosterone release will actually cause sodium and water reabsorption. Is that okay? Good. Now, aldosterone is actually released by the adrenal cortex. From the endocrine system. We all know where aldosterone is being produced in the adrenal gland, from the adrenal cortex. Is that okay? Good. So, at the end of the day, there is going to be an increase in sodium and then fluid retention plus vasoconstriction, and these two processes would cause an increase in your blood pressure. Is that okay? So let's walk through the process again. So renin is released by the kidneys. Okay, so the moment your blood pressure drops or your sodium levels are very low, the kidneys secrete renin into your bloodstream. Is that okay? Good. With the help of the juxtaglomerular cells. And we explained that the juxtaglomerular cells, it's actually stimulated through three mechanisms. Okay, so we have the baroreceptors in the efferent arterioles. So the moment your blood pressure is low, the baroreceptors in your efferent arterioles, they have that ability to detect a reduction in blood pressure, and they send a signal to the juxtaglomerular cells to produce renin. Okay, the second thing is that an activation of the sympathetic nervous system. So the moment your blood pressure reduces, your sympathetic nervous system will be activated. And activation of the sympathetic nervous system directly stimulates the juxtaglomerular cells to release renin. That is 2. And then the last one is the sodium detection or sodium concentration detection in the distal convoluted tubules. Okay, so the moment your blood pressure reduces, filtration will reduce at the glomerulus. Once filtration reduces, the amount of the amount of fluid that is going to reach the distal tubules will reduce. Okay, and once there is less filtrate reaching the distal tubules, okay, the tubules have specialized cells called the molecular denser cells, which will sense reduced concentration of sodium, and that will also stimulate. That process will also stimulate the release of renin from the juxtaglomerular cells. Now, once renin is being produced, it is released into the bloodstream. In the bloodstream, you already have the liver producing angiotensinogen. Okay, now this angiotensinogen is actually a protein produced by the liver. This renin will convert the angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1. Okay, that is what we have here. The renin will actually convert the angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1. Now, the angiotensin 1, okay, would be in circulation until it gets to the lungs, And the lungs also produces an enzyme called the angiotensin converting enzyme. And this angiotensin converting enzyme has the ability to convert the angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2. Now, this angiotensin 2 here is a potent vasoconstrictor. Okay, it's a potent vasoconstrictor. Okay, it's a potent vasoconstrictor. And it has that ability to also stimulate the adrenal glands, specifically the adrenal cortex, to produce aldosterone. Okay, and aldosterone also acts on the kidneys to ensure sodium and water retention. Once sodium and water is being retained, okay, at the end of the day, the blood volume will increase. And the moment your blood volume increases, blood pressure will increase. Okay, and addition to that, this angiotensin 2 is a potent vasoconstrictor which acts on your peripheral blood vessels to cause vasoconstriction. And once there is vasoconstriction, there is going to be an increase in systemic vascular resistance. Okay, and an increase in systemic vascular resistance, the moment resistance increases, blood pressure increases. Is that okay? The moment resistance increases, your blood pressure increases. Okay, so in effect, okay, angiotensin 2 will cause vasoconstriction, aldosterone released by the adrenal gland, and then ADH. Another thing I didn't add is the antidiuretic hormone secretion. Antidiuretic hormone is actually produced in the hypothalamus, but then it is actually stored in the posterior pituitary. Okay, this hormone is produced in the hypothalamus but stored in the posterior pituitary. Okay, this angiotensin 2 can actually trigger ADH secretion. And one of the functions of antidiuretic hormone is enhancing water retention. Okay, antidiuretic. Diuresis means formation of urine. So if a hormone is an antidiuretic, it means it's going to prevent urine formation. Urine formation in the sense that you are losing water. Because if you are urinating, urine is forming. Indirectly, you are losing water. Okay, so if a hormone is an antidiuretic hormone, at the end of the day, it's going to cause water retention. And that will even complement the retention that is occurring because of the aldosterone release, whereby there is going to be sodium and water retention. Is that okay? Good. So you see the effect of this angiotensin 2. It's a potent vasoconstrictor which acts on your blood vessels, the peripheral blood vessels. Okay, good. To cause them to be constricted, and that will also help to raise the blood pressure because of the increase in systemic vascular resistance. Okay, another thing that would occur following the angiotensin 2 releases aldosterone release from the adrenal gland, specifically the adrenal cortex. It will stimulate adrenal glands to secrete aldosterone, and this aldosterone will actually increase sodium and water resorption by the kidneys. Okay, good. And that will further raise the blood pressure. Now, antidiuretic hormone secretion. Okay, one of the effects of angiotensin 2 is that it triggers the release of antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone is actually produced in the hypothalamus but stored in the posterior pituitary, awaiting release. And one of the effects of antidiuretic hormone is to enhance water retention. Okay, good. So that is the process. So let's summarize the whole process again. So I said that the whole renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, the cycle starts with a reduction in your blood pressure. So when the blood pressure reduces, you always have to remember that the moment there is a decrease in your blood pressure, it activates this process. Okay, once there is a reduction in your blood pressure, the amount of blood flow to your kidneys is going to reduce. And once the amount of blood flow to your kidney reduces, that will trigger this process. Okay, so we have the first thing that occurs in this Raas process is the release of renin. But before the renin will be released, the renin is actually released by the gastroglomerular cells. But something should stimulate the gastroglomerular cells to release the renin. And we have three mechanisms that would stimulate the gastroglomerular cells to release the renin. One of them, okay, the first one is the baroreceptors. in the afferent arterioles. So we have baroreceptors inside the afferent arterioles. These baroreceptors, they have that ability to sense or detect, okay, a reduction in blood pressure. So once they detect a reduction in blood pressure, they stimulate the juxtaglomerular cells to release renin. That is one. The second one is the detection of sodium concentration in the distal convoluted tubules. We have some specialized cells in the distal convoluted tubule which is also able to sense a reduced sodium concentration. We call that the macular denser cells. They are located in the distal convoluted tubules and they have that ability to sense decreased sodium concentration. Okay, and what would usually cause a decreased sodium concentration is that when there is a reduction in blood flow to the kidneys, okay, at the end of the day, filtration will reduce. And when there is a low filtration, there is actually going to be a reduced amount of blood reaching the distal tubules. Okay, and the distal tubules, the macular denser cells in there will sense reduced sodium concentration and then would send a signal to the juxtaglomerular cells to release renin. The last thing that will cause the cells, the juxtaglomerular cells, to release the renin is the sympathetic nervous system. Once your blood pressure is very low, sympathetic nervous system will be activated. Okay, sympathetic nervous system will be activated. Once sympathetic nervous system is activated, what will happen is that it is directly going to stimulate the juxtaglomerular cells to produce renin. So these are the three mechanisms that will cause the renin release. Once the renin is being released into the blood, already in the blood we have the angiotensinogen, which is a protein produced by the liver. This renin will convert this angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1. And then the angiotensin 1, as it circulates, gets to the lungs. The lungs produces an enzyme, angiotensin converting enzyme. This enzyme produced by the lungs convert this angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2. And the angiotensin 2 is actually a potent vasoconstrictor. It also acts on the adrenal gland for it to release aldosterone. And this aldosterone is produced by the adrenal cortex. So the angiotensin 1 acts on the adrenal gland to produce aldosterone, specifically the adrenal cortex. And what aldosterone will do is that aldosterone will cause sodium and water resorption in the kidneys. So at the end of the day, sodium and water will be retained in the kidneys, in the body. Okay. This angiotensin 1, tensin 2, okay, also causes vasoconstriction. It causes vasoconstriction of your peripheral blood vessels. Okay, it causes vasoconstriction of your peripheral blood vessels. So at the end of the day, the vasoconstriction and the aldosterone release at the end of the day is going to cause an increase in your blood pressure. Now, this means that anytime your blood pressure also increases, the same baroreceptors would also detect an increase in blood flow. Okay, changes in blood pressure, specifically an increase in blood flow to your kidneys. And the increase in blood flow to your kidneys, okay, would in the end, okay, cause a reduction in the release of renin. A reduction in the release of renin. Now, once the amount of renin that is being released is, so what will happen is that now the baroreceptors will no more be stretched. They will rather be compressed. Okay, and so therefore the juxtaglomerular cells will not be stimulated to release renin. The same way, if your blood pressure is increasing, sympathetics will not be stimulated. So at the end of the day, the juxtaglomerular cells will also not be stimulated. And then again, if your blood pressure increases, filtration will increase, and then sodium concentration in the distal tubules will increase. And so the macular denser cells would actually detect increased sodium concentration. Okay, and therefore renin will not be released. Once renin is not released, angiotensinogen will not be converted into angiotensin 1. Is that okay? Good. And if angiotensinogen is not converted into angiotensin 1, vasoconstriction will not occur, and then aldosterone release will not occur. So in effect, sodium and water retention will not occur. And therefore, blood pressure would be normalized or would be well controlled. Okay, so that should tell you if someone is having a problem with the regulation of this mechanism, okay, with the regulation of this mechanism, the person can even end up having hypertension, heart failure, atherosclerosis. The person can end up having atherosclerosis because you see, there is a pathway where angiotensin 2 can contribute to inflammatory process. Okay, there is a pathway where angiotensin 2 can contribute to the occurrence of inflammatory cascade, which would lead to conditions like atherosclerosis. So, poor regulation of this renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, Raas, can actually cause hypertension, high blood pressure, which I have explained. It can cause heart failure because, if someone is having a low blood pressure and then this Raas system is not activated, is poorly regulated. Okay, at the end of the day, if the blood pressure don't increase with the help of this process, okay, inadequate amount of blood supply would be the situation, and therefore vital organs is not going to, like the heart, the brain, they are not going to get adequate amount of blood supply, and that can cause heart failure. Vital organs, including the kidney itself, that can cause kidney damage. Okay, edema, fluid retention, edema. Is that okay? Electrolyte imbalance. Okay, and the person's risk of stroke and heart attack can increase because a very severe blood pressure can cause a stroke. Okay, and then metabolic disorders. Okay, why metabolic disorders? Okay, why metabolic disorders? Metabolic disorders because poor regulation of Raas, particularly when there is excess aldosterone. Excess aldosterone in some literatures is actually associated with insulin resistance. Okay, once there is excess aldosterone release in your body, it can actually cause insulin resistance. Okay, and insulin resistance, the occurrence of insulin resistance can actually contribute to the development of type 2 diabetes. Is that okay? So poor regulation of renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system can cause any of the following, or can lead to any of the following. Okay, so this brings us to the end of renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Thank you.